Hi, Courage to Change with Karen. This is Karen, and today is January 31st. I want to thank you all for being here today. I have not been around for a while, and oh my gosh, life is in session. And, on that note, I haven't even been doing my blah, 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 blah. I have not even been doing my newsletter. I got totally thrown off track with a lot of things. Life gets lifey, and so I, however, have not stopped my recovery, my daily routine. I've got going again. Back, I'm better with a disciplined plan, and I've been going to meetings, but I haven't been doing my morning and evening meditation like I was. And haven't been able to go on and help people online, which is really my passion. I'm trying to figure out ways to supplement my income while I'm doing this outreach. So I'd like to invite you all to check out the link in the show notes. I've started a little extra business to help supplement my income, and I need your support. So if there is any kind of recovery or sobriety gift that you're looking for, please check out that link. I've got an Etsy store going and my TikTok store going with a bunch of really cute sober t-shirts and canvas totes and a lot of things that people can utilize to celebrate someone's milestone in recovery. So on that note, I'm going to read today's reading and I'm going to, talk about it a little bit because, as you all know, I mean, this has been a crazy 2025 so far, and we're only 1 month in. Um, and I need the extra support. So if I do, I know you do too. So let's read January 31st out of Courage to Change. After working with After working Al Anon's 12 steps zealously for over a year, I was despondent over my continuing lapses into self pity and resentment over the alcoholic's inability to give me the emotional support I wanted. One evening during a meditation on the sixth and seventh steps, three words seemed to flash in my mind. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, and we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. I suddenly realized that much of my zealous working of the program had been the exercise of my own limited power. With a new and sincere humility, I asked God to remove my shortcomings. Boy, I'm really stuttering today, huh? I'm sorry. When I saw the alcoholic the next morning, it was is When I saw the alcoholic the next morning, it was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes. I saw her suffering, struggling to stay sober, and I had compassion for my own struggle as well. My self pity and resentment were gone. I'm going to read it again. After working Al Anon's 12 steps zealously for over a year, I was despondent over my continuing lapses into self pity and resentment over the alcoholic's inability to give me the emotional support I wanted. One evening during a meditation on the sixth and seventh steps, three words seemed to flash in my mind. We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character, and we humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. I suddenly realized that much of my zealous working of the program had been the exercise of my own limited power. With a new and sincere humility, I asked God to remove my shortcomings. When I saw the alcoholic the next morning, it was if a veil had been lifted from my eyes. I saw her suffering, struggling to stay sober, and I had compassion for my own struggle as well. My self pity and resentment were gone. Today's reminder: I want to be ready for shortcomings to be removed, and I will do what I can to prepare. I can develop a non judgmental awareness of myself, accept what I discover, and be fully willing to change. But I lack that power to heal myself. Only my higher power can do that. There's a little quote here. There's sometimes quotes at the bottom. Sometimes I read them and sometimes I don't. I'll read it today. I accept the fact that I need help in being restored to sanity and that I cannot achieve this without help. And that's from The Dilemma of the Alcoholic Marriage. Okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty of this. First thing, let's start with the first part here. After working Al-Anon's 12 steps, um, I kept lapsing into self-pity and resentment over the alcoholic's inability to give me the emotional support I wanted. Well, that is like going to a dry well for water. I worked with a family last night, and I was reminded it was one of those situations that was, I used to be in those situations a lot when I was working at the treatment center and really working in the club room. Physically, I would come across these people with family members that drank like I did. I'm recovering alcoholic and addict as well, if you don't know me. And it is a terrible illness. It is horrible. And for the last maybe about a year, I've been talking to people who've had an alcoholic addict, and they're drinking, they're worried about them. But this was one of those right out of their heads, right? And I got on the phone with the family. It was late, but I could tell something was going bad. And so I called them, and they answered the phone. I said, "Put me on speaker." And I could hear the alcoholic and the addict just out of their mind, raging and breaking things. And I said, let me talk to him. And they said, "I don't want to talk to anybody." And, that whole thing. And I was able to say, "Hey, hey, knock it off. And if you want help, let me help you." And they were crying, and it was terrible. It was terrible. And I remembered all of a sudden, like, how bad this gets. And I told the person on the phone, I said, this is a sick person. This is a sick person, because they started saying things like this reading, like, "Why don't they know what they're doing to me? And how could they do this?" They had a 93-year-old mother in the other room. Why would they scare her to death like this? I said, "You know what? This person is really sick. Like, they're really sick with alcoholism. This centers in your mind. This is a mental illness." And I have the feeling from listening to them, they're either dual diagnosed, or they're not just drinking. Like, they're taking something else. Ends up they were taking Quaaludes. But I could tell it was much, much worse than just a couple pints of vodka, and I was, reminded that as a woman on the planet, walking the planet, whether you're a man or a woman, that I often look to dry well for water. I go to dry wells for water. And, and that's on me. That's not on the other person. Putting expectations on someone else to meet my needs is crazy. That's crazy in itself. So that's the first part. And then it says that they were reading the three words seems to flash in their minds. Now they only have two words italicized. Humbly, and asking him or her, your higher power. Humbly, being humble and asking them to remove our shortcomings. So that's hard when someone in the house is raging and acting out, or crashing cars, or gambling the money in the bank account, whatever they're doing. It really feels like you're the victim, doesn't it? But if you really understand what life's about here, what the big lesson, I think, for anybody on the human planet, a lot of people are born already knowing this. I did not know this. Is that you have control over nothing. You are powerless. Yes, you are powerless over the alcoholic. You are powerless over the addict. You're powerless over drugs and alcohol, whether you take them or someone else takes them. You are powerless over the weather, over the circumstances. You're powerless. Like, you think you can get in there and change things. You can make someone feel better. You can create a happy home. You can do this and that and blah 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 blah. And really, you're powerless. The only thing you have control of is how you respond. That's the only thing. How are you going to respond? How are you going to react? What actions are you going to take based on what's being presented? Right? So it comes back here and it says, with a new sincere humility. Well, that is humbling. The most humbling thing in the world is to realize that you are not the contender that you thought you were. You weren't the superhero that you thought you were. And I know that sounds bad, but in the humility of that, in the realizing that, is where you gain power. So it's really a very it's hard to get your mind around, but continue with me, please. Stick with me. So they asked God to remove their shortcomings. Okay, but stop me from this. Like, what was the person's shortcomings in this? Expecting someone else to meet their needs, right? Having expectations. That was their shortcoming. How can you expect someone who is right out of their mind to make good decisions? How can you expect someone who is right out of their mind to stop doing the thing that's helping them survive? How can you expect someone to meet your needs who is barely hanging on, right? That was her shortcoming, or his shortcoming. Um so God, help me remove that from me, because that's all about me. That's my own insecurity. That's my, inability to meet my own needs and make myself feel okay. Ugh, this has hit me right in the heart, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So in the next morning, they felt like a veil had been lifted from their eyes. What I call that is a shift in perception. That's when nothing has changed in your life, but you see something differently and everything changes. Wayne Dyer said that all the time. The things in my life change when the way I look at the things in my life changes. Something like that. Um, and all the great Stoics talk about that. It's really, the power is in you. How are you going to look at it? How are you going to react to it and respond to it? How are you going to digest it? Nothing is either good or bad until you decide it is, right? You get to decide. That's the power. That's the power. That's the hard part. That's what is so hard, because we want to fall back into, what we think life should be, what we expect things to be, how we expect people to react and respond. Um, and then this person, when their shift of perception changed, they saw it much clearer, and the resentment went away, because they realized everyone's doing the best that they can with what they've got. Now, does that mean you got to accept it? No. You don't. You can see someone's clearly, for example, the family last night that I was talking to, we went through a myriad of different scenarios, right up to them taking them to the emergency room. And they took them to the emergency room, and I said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to ask for a patient advocate. You're going to tell them you need some help, um, to get this person safe and keep everybody else safe, until you can get them to detox in the morning. The detox place couldn't take them till the morning, and people will help you. But it got so out of control and so wild that they kicked him out of the ER. Okay, so a lot of you might have been through this before. It's a terrible feeling. And it's like, I'm trying to help this person and they're making it so hard for me to help them. Well, at that point, I said to her, listen, this person has to want help. And if they're acting crazy and dangerous in the ER, they are going to kick them out, and they are going to call the police, and the police are going to come, and they're going to 5150 this person for their own sake, because they can't get themselves together, right? They can't pull themselves together enough. They're out of their mind, right? And they're going to 5150 them until they can get them calmed down and safe, and then you can work on getting them help. And it was like, oh, I can't let that happen. Well, what do you think you're going to do? You know what I mean? But what do you think who is this person to you? Well, just a friend. Okay. Well, I would leave my friend there if they're acting right out of their mind and they're not listening to me to settle down, or we're going to get arrested. Uh, I would probably leave them there and let the authorities deal with him. Let the ER deal with him. Let him call the police. Let him get him in a behavioral health and figure out what's going on. Is he having a bad reaction to the drugs? Is he having a mental breakdown and the alcohol's not working anymore to help him? Something's going on there, and you're not qualified to help. You're not qualified for this, nor do you need to endure it. Yes, it is happening. No, it is not his fault. But you're not helping the situation. In fact, you're going to get hurt. I mean, you can accept something, disconnect from it, and yet not stick around. Knowing that whatever is in their path is going to happen. Their consequences have to happen. But it's hard to stop thinking that, this person loves me and I love them and no, no, no. No, we're dealing with an illness here. You got to separate from the illness. Okay? We are powerless over that. We're powerless over who gets sick, who gets well, who gets an accident, who, all these tragic things. We're powerless over that. But how are we going to respond? Right? How are we going to respond? We got to respond in a way that we're still useful to the other people in our lives, that we're useful to that person when they're ready to get help. This is such a hard concept. And what's funny is you can understand this 1 minute, and then in a few minutes later, you completely forget, right? Or slowly over time, you start veering off. You're off course, and there's no autopilot to get back on course. So all of a sudden, you're flying right into the, I think of pilots, and they have this autopilot, and if they get off course, it corrects them. It gets them back on track. Well, what if you didn't have that? I mean, eventually you could think that you're flying straight and you fly right into the side of a mountain. I mean, it happens a lot. People's equipment goes down, and they think they're flying up and they're going down. So, you know, this is tough. This is tough. And it's tough. I say that myself because I think of my own life. And, if you're familiar with the Bible at all and the story of Job, I feel like I've been Job for about the whole year of 2024. It was a very hard year for me, and I'm determined that 2025 is going to be my year. It's going to turn around. And I I don't know what's happening. Um but I do know this, that mentally I know, because I've done this program long enough. I know that there's a reason this is happening. I know there's a reason I've been brought to my knees. I'm ready to do anything that I'm supposed to do the next door open. But my physical body has not caught up with that mental thinking. So even though I know that I have a higher power, even though I feel completely disconnected, that Bible verse ran through my mind this morning that said, uh, God, why hast thou forsaken me? You know what I mean? I just feel like all of a sudden someone cut the line between me and God, and he can't hear me and I can't hear him. But I know he's there. I know it's fine, right? I've got to decide how I'm going to react and respond. In the meantime, though, my physical body is not caught up with that. And so what happened this last year is I had so much physical stress still. Like my body was still responding badly, that in my sleep, I ended up grinding down my teeth. I broke a tooth in my sleep. So, I mean, this is not easy. I get it. I get it. I'm with you. I am not speaking from any kind of mountaintop telling you, well, this is what you got to do. And if you do it, everything's fine. No, this is what you got to do because there's no other choice. There's no other choice. You know what I mean? But it's that giving up of the will. It's my ego. My ego's still clinging to something. My ego is still holding on to the fact. Now, I also had a very hard year because it was the year I really cut the cord with the person in my life. And I've talked about this on here before in my other episodes. And, it took a long time to back up from what I'd done. And I really realized that I had to, kind of back out completely. And the minute I made the decision in my mind to do that, it energetically shifted. And I didn't have to say anything at all. She knew. She knew. And she was like, "What happened? Why don't you love me anymore?" I could tell something's changed. What happened? And, it broke my heart, but I knew it's best for her. She has to live her own life, and if that means she's got to hate me to do it, then that's what we got to do. And as a parent, it's heartbreaking, but I gotta let it be. I gotta trust some kind of power other than me, that everything's working out the way it is. And so this morning when I thought, well, God, why have you forsaken me? Why am I going through this right now? Why is this so hard? And I thought, I'm just going to get back to what I did. I haven't done my podcast. There's people depending on the podcast I haven't been there for. So I got back to my regular routine, my regular meeting times, my regular daily meditation. As simple as that seems, there's some safety in that. And it's the way I'm responding. See? So I could have responded by a lot of different ways. But instead of responding in those ways, I decided to respond in the way that I know is best, the way I know has worked before. I'm going to get back to basics, right? And I have. And I am doing better. I'm doing better. Have things changed in my life? No. Are the actual circumstances in life getting worse? It appears so. And I laugh because the problem with life is the very things that have happened to me that have seemed like the very worst have ended up being the best. So I really can't say if this is good or bad. I mean, my body is acting like it's bad because I've ground down my teeth, broke a tooth, my front tooth while I was sleeping. Can you imagine? Um, I'm able to sleep because I'm trusting God and everything, but my physical body on a cellular level is feeling it. So, I know that I don't know if what's happening is really bad or it's really good. I don't know. You know, um, I could say the situation that happened with my family member was so bad, but really, uh, it got me online. It got me on a podcast, right? Would I have ever done this if I wasn't in excruciating pain? Would I have ever dug deep enough to do the things I've done in the last 5 or 6 years? No. So that terrible thing that I think is the worst thing that could happen to me in my life has ended up really being kind of the best because I've been able to help a lot of people. So you really don't know. You got to drop these expectations and that's the humility part. And you got to ask him, help me react differently. Help me quit expecting people to meet my needs that are completely incapable. Help me, God. Help me, universe. Help me, whatever. I just don't know. And life is short, people. Life is short. You know, I don't think life is supposed to be this hard. So apparently I'm making a hard going of it. So on that note, I don't know if what you got out of that. I'd love to hear if you did get something. Message me back, email me, put a comment. Let me know what you thought of this episode. I'd love the response. Part of the reason that I'm so inconsistent is because I don't know if anybody's really out there. Once in a blue moon, I hear somebody say, "Oh my God, your podcast is really saving my life." But otherwise, I don't know. I could be just talking to myself, which is fine. Which is fine. So I will see you tomorrow. I love you all. Thanks again for hanging in there with me.